in process. George? Yoo-hoo, George.
Walk to the bar behind us.
Yeah, really.
Ground control to George.
George? George?
You have his phone number?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Yes, can hear you. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, well then, I'm going to start. So good evening, everyone. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Amateur Astronomers Incorporated. It's also known as AAI for our weekly presentations. We make our home here at William Miller Sperry Observatory on the campus of Union College in Cranford, New Jersey. The observatory is now open to the public on Friday nights, and our plans are to continue to provide the weekly presentations online and on Facebook and also on YouTube, in addition to being in person in the observatory. You can also follow AAI both on our Facebook page at Amateur Astronomers Incorporated and on Instagram at amateur.astronomers.inc. I want to turn this over for a minute to Jim Nordhausen, one of our members. He's going to give you some information about potentially purchasing something. So go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to let our membership know and anybody else interested that we have a telescope for sale from one of our members. It's a 10-inch Skywatcher Dobsonian strictly manual scope. It's in new open box condition. The base has never been assembled. Brand new. This scope runs for $915 right now. If it doesn't sell before NEAF and we take it up there, we're going to be asking $600 for it. But AAI members are eligible for a substantial discount. So if anybody is interested, contact me and
Or at
info@asterism.org.
Okay, thanks, Jim. To continue on, if you're interested in joining AAI, you can go to our website, which is www.asterism.org, and click on Join AAI. And if you'd like to make a donation to AAI, go to our website and click on Donate to AAI. Now, if you are a scout group or a youth leader, we provide a program suited to your group. And to get your group scheduled, also go to the homepage on our website, click on the Contact button, and follow the instructions on how to get scheduled for a program. Now, to go to our presentation this evening, our presenters, we're going to have two. They are AAI members, Al and Bonnie Witzgall. They are long time members of AAI. Al has been a past president of the club, and he's currently the secretary. He's an avid meteorite collector. And Bonnie is our refreshments committee chair. She's also given presentations here along with Al. And both have, as I said, have given lots of presentations over the years. The title of their presentation is Touching Meteorites. And with that, Bonnie, you're going to begin?
Yes. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. But before I start, I must tell you a story. The end of March 2020, my husband, Al, and I were going to present a dual presentation together. It was called Touching Meteorites. And like Mary said, I've done presentations by myself. He has done presentations by himself. But this would have been the first dual presentation together. It was the end of March 2020. But in mid-March 2020, all of New Jersey shut down because of COVID. So we had to wait for 3 years to do this show. And I hope it goes well. Okay. So while you were all sequestered during COVID, or perhaps during any time, did you ever have a desire to touch a rock that came from out there?
No.
Okay, tonight's presentation is touching meteorites, making a physical and personal connection with touchstones from space. The topics for tonight: Hollywood's version of meteorites, and keeping in touch with the real deal meteorites versus meteoroids. Meteorite pieces, depending on their location, incoming, or if they're impacting. And I have examples of humans using meteorites, humans wearing meteorites, humans touching meteorites. And tonight, all of you will get a chance to touch a genuine meteorite. It's a very special talk tonight. How can you touch a meteorite? Well, it all depends how a meteorite would touch you. Folks, you've seen the stories. If you see a Hollywood meteorite in a Hollywood movie, you do not touch it. Because according to Hollywood, they glow when they're on the ground, or they burn and they smolder for days, and they're hot and they're radioactive, and they can carry deadly aliens, and they change sizes. And maybe it's the beginning or the end of society. That's what Hollywood teaches people about meteorites. Really? And really? And it's all predictable. You know, these space rock movies are alarming and amazing and deafening, but they're very deceptive. Hollywood has distorted people's ideas and perceptions about what a meteorite should look like. You know, the movies bring predictions, they ignore the astronomers' warnings, but you have heroic sacrifices, and pets or kids are in peril, but they do survive. And you have destructions of famous landmarks, and you have a star-studded cast. But there's very little real science about meteorites or asteroids. Yeah, collect them all. Every one of these movies have a Hollywood version of a meteorite or an asteroid. And let me tell you, Hollywood is wrong. Now, if you really want to encounter a genuine meteorite today, and like in the movies, sometimes they see it coming into the atmosphere, well, we'd be tracking it for years. Yes, we could be surprised, but the odds are that we would be warned if such a thing was coming in. And don't lose sleep over meteor showers, please. And it's true, smaller pieces do come in, they damage buildings, they damage cars. And every country in the world has different rules and regulations about what happens if a meteorite lands on your property. But if it lands on your property in the United States, it belongs to you. You can keep it, you can donate it, you can sell it, but it's yours. But it is nice to give a piece to NASA or some other university where they can give insight and do research on it and get information about where it came from. And having a meteorite in your hand is a really good way to get people excited about astronomy. This is why people will go to museums and science centers just to look at meteorites. And when people actually touch a meteorite, they get very subdued, or they get very excited. Now, there are plenty of meteorites around for you to see, but sometimes you get confused by a meteor. Again, Hollywood is a bad influence. So how do you tell a space rock from an Earth rock? Well, I brought a couple of samples here. After the talk, you can come up and touch them. Let me hold this up. I hope I do this right. Show people online what this looks like. And it's heavy. Let me tell you, it's heavy. Let me have a show of hands. How many people think this is a genuine meteorite and it's worth $1 million? And it would be a wonderful centerpiece for a museum. How many think that? Very good. Now, how many people think that this is a piece of slag? It is worth nothing, but it might make a nice doorstop. How many think that? That's exactly right. If you found this in the bottom of your coal-burning furnace, you would call this a clinker. That's exactly what it is. But when the lights come on, you come up and you look, this looks like exactly what a Hollywood meteorite would look like. It is a meteor. All of these are meteor. All of these are meteor. Okay, meteorites have fusion crusts, regmagrips, which are like the thumbprints. Have you ever seen a big meteorite and have these little hollows? Sometimes they're called thumbprints. Sometimes it's heavy for its size. Some are magnetic, some are not. They have chondrules. They have tiny little spheres inside them of stony material when the meteorite was put together from on the parent body. A quick way to tell a meteor wrong is because it's usually round. People think it has to be shaped like a baseball or a globe. No. It usually doesn't have holes. It doesn't bubble. It doesn't smoke. It has no radiation. It has no poison gases like on a Hollywood movie. And if it does have holes in it and it's lightweight, it must be pumice, which means it came from an earth volcano. And you're not going to find a meteorite with quartz crystals either. And a meteorite is not hot to the touch. Even if something came in and landed on the ground and you touched it, it would be very, very cold. Because it would only be through the Earth's atmosphere maybe 10, 15 minutes. But for eons, it's been drifting around in space where it's very cold. So for the 15 minutes that it took to come through the atmosphere, it wouldn't be enough time to heat up. That's right. Okay. Now, you really should know the difference between asteroids, meteoroids, meteors, and meteorites. The last step is meteorites. That's the ones that hit the ground. Now, I just happened to pick this website, but there are many other reputable websites to tell you the difference between a meteor, and meteorite. But you should know the difference. Sometimes people get the words confused. Now, we have some examples. I hope I can pronounce them right. The Hoba meteorite fell 80,000 years ago, but it wasn't discovered until 1920. It's a national monument. It's the largest single meteorite ever found on Earth. It's also the largest slab of naturally occurring iron ever found on Earth. And it weighs 60 tons. And there it is. They kept it exactly where it fell. And they just built the amphitheater around it. And you can go and touch it for free. Campo del Cielo in Argentina. Among the heaviest single-piece meteorite masses on Earth. It also is sitting where it fell. And they just built a display around it. All right. It's between Buenos cities in Argentina. The crater's age is estimated to be 40 or 50,000 years old. Campo del Cielo refers to a group of iron meteorites in the area where they were found. Now, let me see if I can pronounce this. I can't read this in the dark. Baku Burrito in Mexico weighs 24 tons, 14 feet across, one of the longest meteorites ever found. It's a very famous tourist attraction, and there it is. Weighs between 20 and 22 tons. Tanzania, discovered in 1930, 16 tons. And again, they left it exactly where it was found, and they built a tourist attraction around this large piece. Armagh Planetarium and Armagh Observatory. This is in Ireland. And this is the largest meteorite ever found in Ireland. 4.5 billion years old. And again, you can go and touch it. Now, I've shown you the meteorites I've just shown you. You can go and touch for free, but they're far away. So if you don't feel like going far away, you can just cross the Hudson River and do that. Agnihito meteorite in the Museum of Natural History in New York City. This one weighs 31 tons. It was thought to hit the Earth over 10 million years ago, brought back from northwestern Greenland in 1897. I'm sure many of you have seen this in the museum. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And again, you can touch this. A lot of meteorites are in museums behind glass. You can't touch them. But the examples I'm showing tonight, you can touch. You can even touch a rock from the moon in the Smithsonian. This was brought back by Apollo 17. It was chosen because it was very big and it was fine-grained and tough, so it would stand up to all the wear and tear of all the fingerprints. UCLA have two of the largest meteorites ever found in California. Sorry. 811 pounds and 326 pounds. And again, you can touch these. You can touch a meteorite in Mosey, the Museum of Science and Industry in Tampa, Florida. Barstow, California, the Old Woman meteorite. Second largest meteorite ever found in the United States, weighs about 3 tons. You can touch this one in Portland State University. There's plenty of history showing where man manipulated meteorites and used them as tools. They put a meteorite on the end of a lance, and that piece of meteorite is from the Cape York meteorite, which is the one in the Museum of Natural History. And if you want to use a modern day tool, you can buy a chef's knife if you have the money. King Tut also had daggers and swords made from meteorites, but they're prone to rust. You have to constantly clean them. Even the modern day meteorite tools, you have to constantly clean them. You can wear meteorites. Wearing meteorites is not new. Earplugs were made by the Hopewell culture in the Ohio River Valley. And they would make artifacts and plate these earplugs with meteoritic iron. And of course, you can wear the modern meteorites as a watch or as rings or as pendants. Again, they're not cheap. Ah, okay. Yes, yes, yes. These are meteorons, but they were done right. Eons ago, meteorites came in and hit Australia. If you fast forward today, we would say it hit around the area of Cranbourne, which is the suburb of Victoria in Australia. So the tourist department said, oh, let's get all the meteorites together, put them on display, so the tourists can come and look at them and touch them. But as you see on this graph here, a lot of them were lost, were stolen, were sold, were taken away. So they couldn't gather as many pieces from the old meteorite fall as they wanted to. So the visitor center and meteorite park got very creative. They took plastic and styrofoam and made meteorons to mimic the pieces that had come in so many decades ago. They hung them up over the sidewalks, and you can take a selfie with a meteorite coming right next to your head. Now, those are meteorons, but they did them well. And before I close, I'd like to thank Mary and my husband Al, who will be presenting part 2 in a few minutes. And I'd like to thank all the science museums that offer opportunities to touch and teach about rocks from space. When a star falls from the sky, it leaves a fiery trail, but it does not die. Its spirit goes to the place where it dropped to shine again. The native tribes sometimes find these small stars in the prairie where they have fallen. And one more quote. We are hit by tons of material every day, but it is all dust. We are all walking around with comet dust in our hair. Now, part 2. How would you react if you really got a chance to touch a rock from space? Would you be happy? Would you be contemplative? Would you be scared? Because Hollywood makes you be scared if you're touching meteorite. Everybody acts differently. But tonight is your chance to actually touch a real meteorite and compare it to some meteorons. So let me introduce my husband, Al Witzgall.
I'm going to take a minute or so to switch out your flash key and then put this one in and get the talk up. If you will bear with us for a minute or two, I'll be right back.
Bonnie, you know how to eject it?
I think so.
And a little, yeah.
Yes. 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 Okay. Eject.
And now make sure you ask that somebody can see it online. When you get your PowerPoint.
Now, give me yours. Goes in this hole. Tough to see. It's tough to see. I'll set you up.
Where am I here?
You're right, kids.
That's it.
No, go up, right there. That's it.
All right. That looks about right.
Come on. Right there. Okay. Okay.
Bonnie, ask to make sure that they can see it online.
Now, can everybody see this? But if they are muted, they can't tell me that they can see it.
Yes, we can see them.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
All right.
That's right.
You never know, they're locked with the transport being shot. Okay.
And now just remember, for people to see you online, you need to use the camera.
Sit down.
I have to sit down. Okay. I really want to be seen on, okay.
You want to,
Okay.
okay.
I'm fine. Okay, so I take it everybody can hear me, I hope. Okay, good evening. This is the old part 2, as they say. Just a little background. I've been collecting meteorites since I was about 8 years old, and it scares me when I think about that because I'm 60 years beyond that. Ouch. My first meteorite came from where else? The Hayden Planetarium, not the one that's there now. The original one was built in the 1930s, where a lot of those large meteorites that you saw in Bonnie's talk still live, if you will. They have another one there called the Willamette, which has a history of its own. So someday I'll probably talk just specifically about that. Tonight is part 2. We're going to be talking about rocks from space. And essentially, the people that are here are going to be able to have the opportunity to touch not one, but 2 meteorites. One which is a stone, and the other one which is an iron. And the iron one has a story all its own, too. So let's move along over here. Okay. Okay. So on any clear night, especially if you're having a star party and trying to do dark sky photography, you'll have something like this come down. This came down during a couple of years back in the Texas Star Party. You can see that it was by Orion. It's Orion's Rising. This came down to practically meet it. And, you know, at certain times of the year like this with the, I believe it's the Perseids, you can get a beautiful show out. As a matter of fact, coming up later this year, around August 12th, the standard summer meteors, or the Perseids, are going to roar because it's going to be near the dark of the moon. It's going to be pretty cool. This is a long-term exposure. This is not mine. I wish it were. Okay. And sometimes it gets a little scary, too. This is photographed over the Grand Tetons back in 1972. The object that you see here came in within 57 miles of the Earth and bounced off the Earth's atmosphere. About 40 years later, it was picked up in one of our asteroid surveys. It will never get that close to Earth again. Our gravity of our planet shifted the orbit, but it does get close enough that our technology can pick it up again. I imagine someday someone will go out with a spacecraft and see all this wonderful burn fusion marks on it from hitting the Earth's atmosphere. Had this hit, it would have hit with the force of about a 20 kiloton bomb. Okay, and of course, there's big stuff here. This is really exaggerated compared to the size of the planet, but it gets the point across. Mass extinctions, of course, the dinosaur killer. We know about 65 million years ago or so. An object roughly about 6.5 miles across crashed in an area which today is called Chicxulub. It's a crater which killed the dinosaurs, but made it easier for us mammals to survive and then to thrive and dominate the planet. Now, if it happened today, this is shamelessly lifted off of one of these movie posters. We see the Empire State Building about to get trashed by the shock wave of a small object, maybe only about a mile across. So very spectacular, very scary, and quite rare. Well, sort of already has happened. 1947, Sicote Alin fell to Earth. This is a relatively small piece, roughly about 70 tons of meteoritic iron hit the ground at that point. And there was the story behind this painting. There was an artist in a nearby town to the impact point, and he looked at the shadows from what he thought was the rising sun. Then he realized he felt heat on the back of his neck. Now, this is back in February. He turns around. This is what he saw, and he painted. This 10 years later became quite a famous postage stamp. You can still get them, but they run a lot today as for collectors. But it's really cool, and a lot of people say this is exactly how it looked, because this is in broad daylight. Okay. Well, probably one of the most famous ones around here was in Peekskill, New York, in the early 1980s. This was probably one of the most videotaped meteorites that had ever existed to that day. Came in about local time, roughly about 10 o'clock at night. Came in, went at about a 45-degree angle to New York City. And one piece, at least, that we know of impacted, and you see it down here, with the car that it hit. Now, the young woman who owned this had just purchased it. It was about $500, a used Chevy Malibu, if I remember right. And, well, let's face it, it's amazing what a meteorite hit will do, because the car was sold to a meteorite collector for $10,000. And the car was only worth $500 in the book value. So they made a little profit here. You know, a little stardust comes in. And the actual meteorite itself, as you can see, it hit the trunk, bounced off the muffler, and came back and was embedded here. This is it right here. You can see the black fusion crust and the white material within. This is, if I remember correctly, is an H-type meteorite, high iron compounds. Okay, and the most recent one here, well, on the other side of the planet, but in history, is 2013, February 15th. On the 16th of February, I was at work in a new place of business called Esco Optics, excuse me. And this came over the radio, and I went to the senior optician that was my boss, really. And I asked, hey, Bruce, this came in. He says, well, don't just sit there, get on the machine, because he really didn't know how to fly the internet. We got it, and I was able to get more information. We figure a total of about 3,000 pounds of material of all sizes, from little stuff about not even a half-inch across to two large masses, each one about 1,700 pounds. That fell in through ice in a nearby lake, and two extremely brave Russian Navy divers went after it and managed to haul them both out. But there were pieces all over the place. Okay. And the shock wave, though, is what did most of the damage over here, because Chelyabinsk is both a mining and industrial center. And this was, or is, a zinc factory, basically smelting out the metal and purifying it. Well, that day, it's a good thing that the work shift started a little bit later in the morning, because the roof collapsed just from the shock wave alone hitting the ground. The thing exploded roughly about a half mile up. Most importantly, almost every window in the small town shattered. That night, it was going to hit -20 Fahrenheit. So I will give the Russian army a nearby base, deployed these gentlemen out there, and they replaced just about every piece of glass with plywood just to make sure nobody froze to death. Nobody did. Some people did get hit by flying glass. There's a picture of a little 13-year-old girl who had a cut right about in the back of the head here. It was superficial, luckily. A few inches further down to the light, we'd be talking about one of the few casualties that meteorite impacts have created, because it just missed a lot of major arteries. Scary. And yes, that is a piece of the actual rock itself. This is a 1-inch cube over here. So it's a nice sized piece. I like to have this on the mantle at home. Okay, and there we are, -20 weather. You can see that some of the windows survived, others were replaced. And then here in the United States, what would become the United States about 50,000 years ago, this object, this is a minor impact, Barringer Crater in Arizona, or Meteor Crater as it's commonly known. It's an iron meteorite, it was an iron meteorite. And this is rather small. It's about 2,000 feet across and roughly, I think it was about 300 feet deep. And that's only a little guy. And you can still find pieces of this. You're not supposed to go collecting, but I've heard of people walking around with magnets underneath the soles of their shoes, and they still pick up all the little pieces of iron. About 1 out of 3 is actually meteoritic iron. Rather dangerous, too, because it's breaking state and then federal law. But, you know. Okay. Now, looking at other planets, we also see them, of course, on other worlds, on Mercury as well. It's a messenger photograph, and you can see, this always intrigues me when you have a crater, and you see some others over here, but then you see all this dark material that's been dug up. And I'd love to know what that is. Anybody for a very hot spacewalk? This is where you'd go. The moon, of course, this is easy. It's right out there. It's 1.8 light seconds away. You can't miss it. We have boot prints on there too. A number of spacecraft have either soft landed or in the early days crash landed into it. Look at all the natural craters here. All through. Even this is a crater. This is Mare Imbrium. And this is, I believe, somewhere around 500 miles across. And we don't know quite how deep. You need to get a geologist out there and start doing core drilling. Some of the other ones over here, Mare Crisium is an impact feature. Almost all the mare, the seas as we call it, are impact features. And then, of course, you got all these little guys all over the place. Tonight, if it were clear, you'd be able to see this rather nice. That's Copernicus, excuse me, Copernicus crater in Kepler. One of my favorites, though, is up here. This is Aristarchus crater. There are actually two of them there, Aristarchus and the Schroeder's Valley nearby to it. And we keep wondering, if we look at this, we may be looking at a place not just where an impact occurred, but maybe a place where ice from comets impacting might have sublimated and then cooled down and was caught there in Schroeder's Valley, which seems to be permanently shaded. Place for an astronaut to come a-running if you're looking to set up a colony or at least a research base. There's quite a few features on it. Someday I'm going to have to do a lecture just on the features of the moon and the phases. Okay, there we are. There's Copernicus now. It's about 60 miles across, about the distance from New York City down to Trenton. There's Plato crater, which is filled with the same kind of basaltic lava that fills Mare Crisium over here, and various mountains, the Apennine Range over here. It's quite a shooting gallery all over the place. And interestingly enough, the lunar far side has many more craters than you see on the near side. Okay, and sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes a piece of the moon makes it to Earth after all that impacting. I'm not too surprised. This is Northwest Africa 2200. It was one of those nice even numbers, so they gave it to a very special piece of meteorite. This is a rock from the moon. There's your scale. I have a piece about the size of the moon as a meteorite, about the size of that quarter. And look at the size of this. This is beautiful. I'd love to have this in my collection. Okay, now how do we know they really are from the moon? Well, obviously, by direct comparison with Apollo moon rocks, they are about an exact match in composition and age. And this is from one of the Apollo flights, Apollo 16. That first number is in the number here is this Apollo 16, the 25th rock, and the sampling description, I believe, on here. So that's a nice chunk of rock. It will look great on my mantle. Okay, we also have them on Mars. They're all over the place. This actually shows the atmosphere, a dusty atmosphere, and one of the larger craters there. This is another one, I believe, Opportunity. Opportunity? I think it was Opportunity came to its end over here. It just ran out of power. It's so dusty. That covers the power of solar batteries, and that's the end of that real quick. Sometimes even Mars visits us. This is Northwest Africa 7034. Black Beauty, as it's called. It's only one of a few dozen meteorites that have come from Mars. And how do we know that? Well, quite simply, on-site study of rocks, in this case, by Curiosity, which on Mars shows a very good match for some meteorites that are found here on Earth. Just recently, I got lucky. I was able to fight my way through eBay and get to this particular rock. It's the largest one in my collection. It's roughly about 27 millimeters by 12 by 2 millimeters thick. And I'm trying to get another smaller piece for one or two, a professor and one or two of her students over at Rutgers. Okay, so here's what happens when they're coming to Earth as a meteoroid. It's the atmosphere running. Sometimes they explode and then impact. This is from quite a long ways away and moving at quite a good speed. Okay, and then we have one of the sources, of course, one of the bigger ones, cosmic leftovers from the asteroids. This is not on the left is 921 Gaspra, and then 24 Ida and its moon. A little chip off the old rock here. Not quite, it's not quite an eighth of a mile across. This is, for comparisons, roughly about 16 miles or more. So even they have little satellites too. This is where most of our meteorites come from. So there are basic three types. The types of meteorites, in this case, the irons, cores of the asteroids. And the reason we know this is because on Earth, what little metallic iron occurs naturally here, when you etch it with an acid, does not show this pattern. It's what's called a Widmanstätten pattern. Nickel iron, as it cools very, very slowly over tens, if not hundreds of millions of years, creates a crystal format. When you cut them, polish them, and then etch them with special acids, you get this pattern. It's named for the chemist that discovered this fact. And it's a good way of telling it. The piece of iron in your backyard actually is just waste iron, maybe from a car axle, or if it really came from out there. Okay. This is perhaps some of the most beautiful of meteorites. These are the pallasites, which are stony out irons. As the name implies, the stone in this case is olivine, usually, and the material around that holds in a matrix is iron nickel. The mantles of asteroids, and if I can be a little poetical over here, if you look at the universe as a grand cathedral, you walk into a great cathedral and you see stained glass windows. Well, if the universe is a cathedral to creation, the pallasites could be thought of as the stained glass windows. This particular place of worship of creation. Absolutely beautiful. I didn't want to risk it because there's always a possibility. I know nobody would really intend on deliberately dropping it, but these are relatively fragile. And so you can shine light through them. They have to be relatively thin. One of these days, though, I'll see if I can get one that's embedded in blue sight, so nobody can break it. And we'd be able to shine it up. It's really a cool thing to see. Okay, and then the last one, really the majority of them, are the chondrites, remnants of the solar nebula. This is a piece of a meteorite called Northwest Africa 869. And when you magnify them and magnify them under a special polarizing microscope, and this is ground to, I believe it's 30 microns, no, 50 microns thickness, you can pass polarized light. And just like we do here on Earth in petrology, the study of rocks and rock-forming minerals, you're able to identify minerals in the meteorites themselves. It's a nice shot. And again, how do we know that it actually came from 869, came from an asteroid? In this case, the spacecraft tell us. The Near-Shoemaker spacecraft went to asteroid 433 Eros. By the way, the numbers in asteroids refer to the number in sequence that they were found. In this case, it was the 433rd asteroid discovered. Eros is an Earth crosser. It gets awfully close to the Earth. And if you wait long enough, about 20, depending on who you read, between 20 and 30 million years from now, that 16-mile rock is going to hit the Earth. So I make plans for getting out of there. But the rocks there on an on-site site study, see, it was not really meant to land. They wanted to see if maybe they could do it because the gravity of Eros is kind of light. If you weigh 100 pounds here, if remember on there, you only weigh something like about maybe 1.5 pounds tops, maybe a little less. Well, they had a gamma ray spectrometer, which just wasn't sensitive enough to be able to read the composition of the object. So they said, well, we're going to do this. Let's try it. They landed, did a nice soft landing, and it turned out they had stuck, if you will, stuck the nose of the gamma ray neutron detector into the regolith, the dirt and dust that surrounds the asteroids. And it turned out it matches very, very close to the common chondrites. In the case of 869, it's very close, almost an exact match. Okay, now how do they get here? Sometimes you have small asteroids crashing into larger ones, and the pieces from that, Earth and other planets, sweep them up. In this case, we have Earth, and a whole bunch of collectibles coming to Earth. And so how do you know a rock is a meteorite? Well, here you are, folks, in the Sahara Desert. And it kind of looks out of place. I mean, look at the background over here. It's this light grayish brown and such. And here you got these black rocks all over the place. And there's a close-up on this from here. This is that. And you can see it's relatively new on the ground. And you can see that this is very dark colored. It's a glass, which is black and heavy for its size. Now, to keep the Sahara Desert beautiful, it's my understanding that these guys cleaned up every rock they could find there. which is nice. You know, you got a lot of the stuff available for research, but these guys are also commercial. So they made some money on this and didn't leave anything for anybody else. I'll tell you. I mean, how can you make a buck these days? Okay. More meteorite idea. You've seen a slide before. The lighter, usually lighter colored material inside. You can see here. Chelyabinsk. Okay, then Vesta, one of my favorite asteroids. I've seen it at least once and photographed it at least twice with the 24-inch. It's one of the brightest of the asteroids. It hits magnitude, it's around 4.8 thereabouts, which is relatively bright. And it doesn't come that close here. It's what we call a main belt asteroid. But pieces of this have come to Earth. We can identify them just by studying it. And the Dawn spacecraft, where this photograph came from, was able to trace the particular series of Howardite, Eucrite, and Diogenite, or HED meteorites, to this object. And apparently, it is also the creator, this asteroid, is a survivor of a major hit that created a bunch of little asteroids, which are called Vestians, because their orbits, if you trace them back, come back to a point where Vesta was. So we have a rough idea where and approximately when it was impacted. You can see some of the craters. They call this one, this group, the snowman, because it kind of vaguely looks sort of like a snowman, sort of. There's some large hits up here. Okay. However, with other ones like Ceres, also photographed by the Dawn spacecraft, what falls on Ceres usually stays on Ceres because there's a lot of water ice mixed into the rocky soil, and sometimes some of it comes up and leaves these white deposits. This is very exciting. The Ceres, one Ceres is the first one discovered, and it also happens to be the largest of the group. Okay, so I have to thank Bonnie for keeping this presentation looking very well. I gotta admit, I think Bonnie, you did a magnificent job on your talk. That was great. I couldn't do any better, far from it. And Mary, of course, allows me to come up here and do some of these talks. Okay, now, who wants to touch a meteorite? They're not radioactive, don't worry. You know, and also, I'd like to assure you, if you come from the planet Krypton, do not worry, there's no green kryptonite. That doesn't explode. These things are not radioactive at all. And I'm afraid you're going to have to do a little bit of walking.
Maybe when people are done here,
Okay,
we
yeah,
can hold them
good
up to the camera too.
Well, we got some ideas. Since we are still on camera over here, this is my 3 set. I hope it comes out over there, where you can see the iron, stony iron, and stony meteorites and such. These are relatively good sized pieces. I got lucky. There was some years ago, there was a meteorite and mineral salesman that had 3 for $100. I said, all right, I'm there. And there it is. Now it's a lot more. As I mentioned before, first victim, hi. You can see that this is the fusion. This is why we need the lights on here. There's a good fusion crust on here, and the interior is lighter. What little light is here, so you're able to see display. You have flex of meteorite iron. Okay, grab her. I got guards at the door. There's a 50 terawatt laser there. That's Northwest Africa. I wish I knew the number. That's just feel how heavy this is. For its size. This is a lot of olive beans. Now this kind of work, the conjugal dust and it's not really long. You want long. Yeah, I know, but all I can think is all of it is the product. Probably shows how old it is. Oh yeah, there's all around.
Okay, Hold on. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Next week, our presenter will be Kathy Vicari, who's going to give her What's Up talk about what you can find out in the night sky for the month of April. And a reminder that on April 21st will be our monthly speaker, which will be Heather Prince. Heather Prince. We will be in the Roy Smith Theater there. And just to remind everybody, if you want to join AAI, you can go to our website, which is www.asterism.org, and click on Join AAI. And also a reminder, we're having Astronomy Day on Saturday, May 20th. So go to our website to get more information about that. And would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight and wishing you clear skies.